All right, let's start with A. So every single vowel has two different ways of pronouncing it when you speak it. However, because this is sung French, I'm going to stick with the typeface A, which brings you into a little bit of a brighter position. So I'm not going to worry about doing the rounded A with the line on the side. I'm going to stick with typeface A, and that will indicate that we're doing a brighter pronunciation. So for the purposes of singing, A has one pronunciation in the Emily method, which is that it's just going to be ah. So the first word we're going to experiment with is the word ma, which means my. Okay? So you have M, typeface A, and all you're going to say is ma. Give it a try. Ma. Not ma. Ma. So bring the tongue forward just a little bit more. Ma. Okay, let's move on to E. E has three pronunciations. When you see E by itself, you're typically going to see it with an accent aigu over the top, which is when the top of the tail falls to the right. Okay, and that's going to indicate that you close the sound, meaning that you don't let there be as much space in your mouth. So think about it like your tongue is here, the roof of your mouth is here, your tongue is here, and when you bring your tongue super high up in your mouth, that's an E sound. So say E and recognize how your tongue rises and it closes off that resonant space. So you get all of the really high frequencies that can actually live there. So when you flex your tongue and bring it all the way up to the roof of your mouth, you get a very bright, pinny kind of sound, which is what an E is. This is an E, this is an A. A. So whenever you see that tail that's tipped to the right, I don't know if this is right in your angle, but the top of it tips to the right. Okay, so it falls toward the rest of the word, falls forward in the way that you, like the direction you read, and you're gonna close that sound to an A. Now it's not E, and it's not eh, and it's not our American A, because we have a diphthong there. We start more open and then we close. A. We don't do that. It's not A and it's not E, it's A. A. Okay, so it's a little bit brighter, but it's one shape. It's one position in your mouth. Hold that position and keep it so that it doesn't, you don't do a weird diphthong like that little glide at the end. A. We're not going to do that. A. A. Hold the position. Don't move it. Just vibrate your vocal folds through the position. A. The next one is when you have it's at the final part of a word. So you have a word that ends with ER, ED, or EZ, okay? So a word like trouver. Now I'm gonna pronounce them like you're singing them. If you were to speak it, it would be trouver. I know that. I'm gonna pronounce it like you'd sing it. So we're gonna say trouver. The ER there indicates that you do a closed E. Trouver. Oops. Trouver. The next one is something like pied, P-I-E-D, which I think it means foot, doesn't it? Pied. So you're going to get this kind of glide into the A on pied. The next one is A-L-L-E-Z, which is aller, or to go. Like if people are like aller, aller, it means go, go, go. So you get this kind of A-A-A sound. Aller, aller, aller. Not allez, allez, allez. Can you hear how it's different? Don't say it like you're an American. Allez, allez, allez. You're just going to take it right to that position and hold it and then vibrate through. Allez, allez, allez. The next group of words that you're going to do a closed E in is one syllable words ending in ES. So things like LES, which means the, DES means of the or some, and then you're going to look at MES, which means my, TES, which means your. So we're going to look at something like that. You see this all the time, you guys, because the is literally before everything. So if you look at LES, you're going to see it all over the place. And I have a little bit of a different opinion about this because resonances change depending on what follows it. So let's set the rule and then I'll talk about that for a second. So LES, les, I do close that. Les, des, mes, te. So we're going to do les, but if I had a word that opened up after it, like en is a very open sound, it's easy to kind of get a color of openness, like les enfants, les enfants. It just depends, okay? So make sure when you talk to your coach about it, I would default to les, not lay. Did I just do lay? No, don't do lay. Do les enfants. Just close that sucker up unless somebody tells you not to, okay? Which is entirely possible. Just stay flexible. Stay flexible, but sure. The next pronunciation of E is going to be an open E, meaning you bring the tongue down a little bit more so you get more of those darker colors. So we get the sound eh, and it looks like this in IPA. It's called an epsilon or epsilon. You're going to do an epsilon here, and it means to open it up a little bit. So it's going to be eh, like the word bed or head. It's a little bit more open, but the tongue is still very forward. So you get words like prêt. Prêt. Sorry, I keep doing that. I will pronounce it like you sing it. Prêt. So P-R-E-S. But the E, if you notice, has the top of the accent going the opposite direction from the aigu that we already talked about. So that means when the accent falls backwards in the opposite direction you read, it's going to be an accent grave. So it's going to open it up a little bit. So you get prêt instead of prêt. So give that a try. Try saying the word prêt. Prêt. And don't be afraid to roll that R. Prêt. Try très. Très, which means very, right? Très facile, très facile. It's very easy. The other instance that you would pronounce an E open, like prêt, is if it has a circumflex accent over the top. So a word like prêt, and you're like, but that sounds exactly like P-R-E accents grave S. I know, it's French. It's so frustrating. If you have a circumflex over the top of the E, it opens it up, okay? So a word like prêt, or like what's that restaurant in New York? Prêt à manger. Prêt à manger. That's where you would do that. So you're gonna open up that E so that it's not prêt, but it's prêt. And another word would be like rêve. Try saying that one. Instead of rêve or rêve, it's rêve. Rêve. Again, if you're not sure where that's supposed to fall, say the word head or bed and try and scoot that in. So you get rêve, head, rêve. The other time you would pronounce E as an open E is when it occurs in a syllable ending in a pronounced consonant. So if you get a word like avec, which means with, avec moi, then you would use eh. So you see that E in avec comes just before a pronounced consonant at the end of the word. So it has to be at the end and it has to be pronounced. If it's not pronounced, then you get things like the easy we already talked about, which is closed, like allez, allez. If it were pronounced, let's pretend like it's pronounced, even though it never is. This is not a French word. It would be à l'aise, à l'aise. It would open it right up. But because you don't pronounce it, it's closed. So we're talking about the word avec. So here we have an A. We already know how to do the A's. Avec, avec. That's not just at the end of words. This is if you have a syllable ending in a pronounced consonant. Okay, so if like a word that is multisyllabic, like espagnol, S, it's going to be an open E because that's one syllable. Espagnol. So S instead of es or us. Espagnol. All right, let's get to the schwas. Is the schwa next? We were going to do nasal vowels, but I am going to do the schwa right now, but just to give you a little bit of a taster, okay? So you do a schwa, which is kind of a non-vowel. You just kind of vibrate through your mouth when everything is at rest, like the. So we're going to do the same thing. You're going to do a schwa in one syllable words ending in E. So the word like le, which means the or him or it. You're going to do it in a word m, which is me or to me. You're going to do it in t and s. So le, practice with me, le. Le. I mean, try and make it as non-vowel as you can because it can shift into something else so easily if we're not really insistent that it's le. We don't have flex anywhere. Don't flex your tongue. Don't flex your lips. Le, s, m, t. Easy. You got it. We also do the schwa at the end of syllables that are not word finals. So a word like devoir, devoir, which means should or must. So devoir, you get de, voir. I also noticed, I like to think of it a little differently. Now this doesn't always work, but 95% of the time it does. If I have an E in between two consonants. So devoir has D-E-V. You've got those two consonants bracketing that E. I have noticed a consistent pattern that you don't really read in any of these diction books, that if it's in between two consonants, it's usually a schwa. Barring any of these open-closed rules that exist for closed E and open E, it's usually a schwa if it's in between those two and it's in the middle of a word. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So let's practice with that one a little bit because I know people struggle with it. So we're gonna say devoir, not devoir or devoir, devoir. The next word we're gonna do is avenue. Avenue. Now don't worry about the end. We'll talk about U's and how to pronounce them in the mouth. We're just gonna worry about that E. We already know what the A does. See, you already know so much. You're basically French. Avenue. Avenue. Okay, finally we're gonna talk about when you see an E and it's actually silent in its pronunciation. The silent or unpronounced E occurs as unaccented E at the end of words of more than one syllable. So it's not as complicated as it seems, I promise. If you see an E that follows a consonant, it's usually a schwa, okay? Like, let's simplify this so that it's not like, oh, we have to use our academic language. Like, let's just simplify this. So a word like facile, you get this little, what I call shadow vowel, because it's almost like you forgot to stop vibrating your vocal folds when you stopped the word. When you said the L, you forgot to stop your voice after the L was done. So instead of facile, where I stop vibrating as soon as the L is done, you get facile. It's like this little teeny shadow. You get it in Italian a lot, right? Facile. The next one is quel. Quel. You get this little at the end. Capitale. Capitale. You get these little things at the end. Now listen, I'm saying it how you would sing it. Remember that. You would not say in French, facile, facile. They wouldn't do that. They would say très facile. Do you hear any shadow vowel? No. It wouldn't be like très facile, très difficile. Like, they wouldn't do that. It's très facile, très difficile. However, when we sing it, we usually have notes that are attached to that which means we have to pick a vowel for them, right? So we're gonna do a schwa. So you're gonna say facile. Let's pretend like I just put that into a song. Facile, whatever. Then you go on. So you're gonna have to put the schwa at the end. So don't get confused when you see that in French pronunciation in a dictionary where they don't have it IPA'd out and you're like, why isn't it there? Because they're showing you how they say it, not how it's sung. But we're talking about sung pronunciation. So here you're gonna get that schwa. The other time you're gonna pronounce E as a schwa is if it's at the very end of a word and it pluralizes that word. So if I'm gonna take facile again, and if you were to pluralize that or make it more than one, so you put an S at the end of the word, you're gonna have to do a schwa. So you'll have facile, and you would actually say the schwa in that instance, so that they know you're talking about the plural form of that word in your speech rather than the singular form. So there's a difference between facile and facile, okay? The meanings are different, and it is important that you pay attention to that. You have to be specific, otherwise you'll say a completely different word. So if you're looking at a word like facile, quel, we're just gonna pluralize everything that we said before. Capitale, it's gonna say capitals or cities, which or what. I mean, it changes just slightly what you're doing. All right, okay, let's talk about ENT endings, all right? This is something that you're gonna bump heads into. Unless you speak French, you're not gonna know whether or not to do a schwa in sung French or to do an A nasal. You're just not gonna know. Because unless you can recognize when the word is a third person, plural, present, verb, ending, you're not gonna know whether or not to do it, okay? So one of those is a schwa, and sometimes it's an A nasal sound, all right? So a word like trouve, or the way that you would sing it, trouve, that has an ENT ending. but it is a schwa because it is a third person plural present verb ending. Okay, you wouldn't know that. You just have to look them up. Okay, so from here on out, when you're like, I see an ENT, there's a rule, I know there is. There isn't a rule that you'll be able to just be like, oh, that's the rule, and now I know forevermore how to pronounce ENT endings. You don't. You have to look them up, okay? Unless you speak French and you can make that recognition, you have to look every single one up. And if you are a competent musician, you will look them up, or you will refer to someone who's a native French speaker or a native French singer who sings that piece and says it that way. But you want to refer to more than one resource so that you're sure you're pronouncing that ending correctly. So ENT endings from here on out, just look every single one up. Okay, we're moving on to E. Finally, how wonderful. E is going to be pronounced basically like the vowel you see in English. So it'll be E. It's the same in Italian. If you see a lowercase I, you're going to say E every single time. So a word like difficile, which means difficult, all of those E's are going to be E. Nothing's going to change about them. Please don't do a capital I, which is an I. Difficile, please don't. Please don't do that. Make the commitment to close the space in the mouth to E. Difficile. Difficile. Say it with me. Difficile. Ici, which means here. Ici. Ici, like the word ici-bas. You guys know that song. Ici-bas, tous les lilas meurent. Like, you know that song. Ici-bas. It's not ici or issa. It's ici. The other pronunciation of E is when you see Y beginning words. It's mainly in proper nouns that you're going to see that. So a word like Ypres, which is, I believe, a city in Belgium. Ypres. And then you're going to get Nancy. Nancy. So you're going to have an E sound for those Y's, okay? When you see Y in French, you're going to pronounce it as an E. The next one, when the French letter I is followed by another pronounced vowel, it's pronounced like the Y of the English yes. So a word like official, which we would look at and be like, oh, that's official. Nein, es ist nicht. Oh, this isn't German. No, it's not. Officiel. Officiel. Okay? Remember that E opens up to because the L is pronounced at the end. Remember? Officiel. Officiel. So you're going to get that little J glide because it's followed by a vowel that's pronounced. Okay? So, officiel. There you go. All right, moving on to O. O has two ways of pronouncing it. You can do open O, which is just an ah with lips around it, or you can do closed O, okay? Which is like putting lips around, just put a marble in your mouth, okay? So I'll show you what I mean. So if you've got an open O, you're gonna do ah, like a dark ah, and then you're gonna put lips. Oh, oh. Like, alors, like A-L-O-R-S. Allah. Lots of lips. If your lips are not out, you're doing an ah. So you keep those lips out so it doesn't go Allah, Allah, Allah. It has to be out. Okay? When I talk about a closed O, like bientôt, bientôt, we're gonna act as if we have a marble in our mouth or something like this size. This is one of my erasers. Just put something like that in your mouth so that the tongue will dip in the middle. So you get some of those darker colors, but then we're going to bring a brightness to it as well by shaping the lips a little more closed. So we're going to have bientôt, bientôt. Instead of bientôt, that would be open, bientôt, which is an ah with lips. Okay, so now you know the difference between open O and closed O. Now what I have found is that sometimes the explanations in pronouncing dictionaries are a little confusing. They're like, this usually occurs in a syllable ending in a consonant. And it's like, can we just not talk about syllables for a second? There's an easier way to talk about this. If the O is followed by two consonants, it's like a gate. You open it up so you can go through, okay? So, mort, M-O-R-T, has two consonants that follow. It doesn't mean you pronounce them all, but it's followed by two consonants. So you're gonna open that up like a gateway. So, mort, or alors, or bonne, bonne. It's not nasal, bon, it's bonne. If it's followed by two consonants, that's all you need to remember. Don't think about syllables. If it's followed by two consonants, that rule is pretty consistent. Let's talk about closed O's. you pronounce it like the O of the English no without the W. No, 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 we're not going to do that. But without the off glide, so there's none of that W thing that happens. It's going to be no. So when it is written as a circumflex O with a little circumflex over the top, remember we talked about that? You are going to close that baby up. So the word CO with the circumflex, TE, côte, côte, you're going to close it. Again, like bientôt, bientôt, the O has a circumflex, like notre or notre, you're going to have to roll it. All of those are going to have closed O's. The next one is when it comes before a Z sound. So often S, when it's got two vowels on either side of it, often S is pronounced like a Z. So the word like rose is going to be rose. So when it comes before a Z sound, rose. But just like with the open O, I said there were two consonants that open it up just to simplify the rule. We're going to use the same thing with a closed O. If it's followed by one consonant, it's closed. Okay, let's just simplify. Two consonants, it's open. One consonant, it's closed. I have found this to be pretty consistent in my pronunciation history, which has been extensive. Okay, when it's the last sound in a word, like stylo, which is pen, or gros, so Gros. S's and T's are silent at the end of those words. Okay, and we'll get to how you know that rule. I promise it's so simple. Let's move on to the letter U, which is pronounced and symbolized by a Y, okay? And the sound you want to make when you see a U in French, you want to pronounce it with an E in the mouth and OO lips, okay? So you're gonna put E and elongate it, and then you're gonna move your lips over the top. So what I have my students do is kind of sing the E and then move the lips as they hold the sound out so they can hear it changing. So we're gonna go E, E. So you get both OO and E in the pronunciation. So give that a try. E. You get some of those whistly tones. You access those cool frequencies. So a word like moon, which is lune, lune, which you not lune. Please don't J glide the living H out of everything. Lune. You just want to go right to the position and then hold it. Okay. So a lot of people like to do this little J glide before. My students sometimes struggle with this. They love to do lune, lune, or they do lean. And it's like, no, we gotta have OO lips. Lune, lune. So take some time transitioning from a consonant to that position, and I think you'll find it a lot easier. You see the word UNE a lot, which means one. In. You have to say the N. You have to do that little Y on the U. In. Okay? You also get a word like PLUS, which means more. So pli, pli. Not pliu, pliu. Please don't say pliu. Pli, pli, pli.